and welcome back to another video with the Muleskinner. My name is Erin Wides, and today we're focusing on a really special story. We get to work with some of our UCM alumni and talk to them about what experience they gained while they were here, some of their favorite memories, and then what they gained here, how that helped them get jobs in their future, and where they're at now. And today our first guest is Chris Post. Welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah. So what was your position when you were here, and what did you do?
Okay. Well, I started in 1994 as an opinion writer, and then I did feature stories and news stories, and I finished up my senior year as the assistant news editor.
When I started here in 2010, I was just a writer. Dr. Fair actually pulled me from his Elements of News Reporting class, and I loved doing that. And so eventually I got to be the assistant news editor and moved up to the news editor, and eventually the managing editor was my final position from 2012 to 2013.
Yeah, so I was the news editor here last year. I graduated in 2018, and I worked under Jackie Flanagan, and I worked really closely with Caitlin Brothers, Denise Elam, EJ Henderson, and then a couple other people who were, super duper important and that actually helped me a lot whenever I was here.
So I started in 2014 just reporting, and I was writing kind of just feature pieces. And I remember being really inspired by Humans of New York, which is kind of an online, and it turned into a book and is a really cool sort of features piece. And so with the help of Leah Wonkum and Steven Spears, we started Faces of UCM, which was what I worked on for a long time. So I wanted to keep doing that, but then I started working in a paid position, which was assistant news editor, and basically I was writing police reports for a long time. And so every week I would walk over to the county police office, and I would get the police reports and scan them and then come back here and do that. So homecoming was a really busy time, and I did that for, I guess, a semester. And then I was a features editor, which was my favorite time, and I really enjoyed that, and just writing about people and what was going on the campus. And then for about a year I was the news editor, and it was a really great experience.
Well, I started writing, and then I was an assistant news editor, and then a features editor, and then news editor, and then managing editor for 2 years. So from, I think, 2004 to 2006, but I could be a little off on that.
I was the managing editor in 96, 97. So I did a little bit of everything.
I started out at the Muleskinner just as a staff writer, and then became a features editor, and then news editor, and then I was the online editor. I actually put the first online Muleskinner together, and then I also did advertising sales and stuff when I was starting, because I was trying to make money, and that was one way to make money. But most of the time I was a news editor here. I was a news editor here for a long time.
Well, I was advisor for 12 years, and for 5 of that, the last 5, I also had Digital Bird.
Do you have any favorite memories just off the top of your head?
Oh, well, for me it was the experience of being in the newsroom, of being surrounded by other student reporters, all of us chasing down various stories, working together, helping each other out. Just the culture that developed in the newsroom is a family, a sort of demented family, but a family.
We had a lot of kind of, I don't want to say high profile stories, but we did at the time. There was a murder trial going on when I was the managing editor here in town, so we covered the candlelight vigil for that, and a lot of press that went along with the trial, and so that was a good experience. I mean, a horrible tragedy to be writing about, but it was a good experience to have that. So, and there was a house explosion a couple weeks after that. Somebody was smoking next to an oxygen tank, and a house here in town blew up, and so we covered the fire, and it was a lot of breaking news that semester that I happened to be a part of, and so we had a lot of fun kind of running out in the middle of the night to cover these things. It felt like we were really professionals. Even though we were just students, it was a lot of fun.
At the time, our features editor was Denise Elam, and I was the news editor. And she came up to me one day and said, "Hey, do you want to go to California with me?" And I'm a traveler, and I said, of course I want to go to California. Like, why wouldn't I go to California? And she said, okay, good. Well, it's for a journalism conference. And I seriously almost started crying. I was like, Denise, I'm so happy that not only do you want to travel with me, but you want to further our journalism education and things like that. And the night that we booked our tickets, we were here in the newsroom. No one else was here. It was just the two of us. And we blared California Girls by Katy Perry. And the two of us literally just danced around forever. And it's one of those memories that not only was I doing something that had to do with journalism, and I knew that I was about to further my career, but I was also with one of my best friends being silly here in the newsroom. And it was, I think about it now and it just makes my heart happy.
I guess some of my favorite memories are just late nights in the newsroom with Leah and some of my other friends who were here, and just working really hard to make a deadline. And actually one of my favorite pieces that I wrote was about the squirrels on campus, and it was in a homecoming issue, I think in 2014. So that was really fun because I interviewed students about their opinion of the squirrels and how they were so, they would come up to them. Some of my favorite memories too were from Faces of UCM and just the people that I met. Like, I remember meeting a student who walked around on stilts, and he told me his story about being a homeless youth and his journey to coming to college. So some of those were really awesome, and just seeing people kind of deeper than face value. So that was pretty great. Also, rolling down this long hallway here in the Wood building in our office chairs and racing each other. That was really fun.
Oh gosh, I mean, and that's just it. I was really kind of reflecting on my time at the Muleskinner because I do think about it so fondly, and I know that I should say, oh, it was this big story that we reported on that I was really proud of, and I don't know that there's any one thing that came to mind except for the laughs and the fun that we had and the time that we spent together. And, you know, I met some really wonderful people, and we had a really great time. It was by far the best part of my college experience.
We had, I think, a good working relationship over the years. And I taught 41 years, and what I've enjoyed most about it were the students and not the classroom, really. There were just a lot of good memories come out of this place.
It was kind of a tumultuous time. We were in trouble a lot. We kind of got into it with the administration a lot. One of my news writers was the current advisor, Matt Birdmeyer. So, but we had a couple different times where we were on the bad side of the administration, and I had news editors and people that were always getting me in trouble. So that was the good stuff.
Yeah, actually, I remember my very first big story that I did was on since we're homecoming. It was over the stadium down there. It was when it was first built, and when it was first built. The year before I was going to college here, the year before they had been telling people that whole stadium had been paid for by donations, and that was totally paid for by donations. And in fact, I was in a speech class, and I heard a student get talked down by the teacher because he suggested that students were going to have to pay for it. Well, my first story was over the naming, and I went over to talk to the president, or the vice president who was in charge of finance at the time. I can't remember his name, but anyway, he was a great guy, Dr. Edmonds. And I went over and sat down with him, and I interviewed him for about an hour and a half. And I found out that there was a $1 million donation for the person who was named after, and then the other $10 million, if they didn't get donations, would be paid for out of the general fund. So students were going to have to pay for it. And I wrote that story, and of course it ran the Thursday before homecoming. And I remember going over to give Dr. Edmonds a proof sheet, because I always took my stories to people, make sure that I got their quotes right, because if I didn't, the next week I would write, a retraction. And I remember going to the office, and at the time, Dr. Ed Elliott was the president, and he was yelling at Dr. Edmonds for telling me that the students were going to end up having to pay for this. And I remember Dr. Edmonds saying, "Well, I'm not going to lie." And I walked in and gave him the paper and asked him if there was anything wrong in there. He said, "Don't worry, son, if there was something wrong in there, you would have already heard about it."
And so some of the experience you gained here, where did that take you right after college?
Okay, so right after college, when I graduated, I had what I felt was a very impressive portfolio, and my employer did too. Actually, I had my choice of jobs. When I first graduated, I applied like a shotgun just everywhere, but I had 3 job offers to choose from right out of college, and so I started working at a newspaper, a small-sized daily newspaper in Marshall, Missouri, and hit the ground running. There wasn't anything that they could throw at me that I hadn't already done at the Muleskinner. And so the experience here just transitioned perfectly into the professional world.
So when I graduated, I had just gotten my master's degree and I put out feelers everywhere, and I ended up getting a job at Warrensburg Collision, which sounds weird, it's a collision repair shop, but they were looking for a marketing coordinator to do their social media and their graphic ads and stuff like that. So I did that for about 4 years before coming to work here at the university, which is what I do now.
Yeah, so basically right after college, I got a job working in broadcast news, which is kind of crazy for me because my time here at the Muleskinner made me think that I wanted to work in print forever. And then someone called me and said, "Hey, we had seen some of the video work that you'd done and we saw your writing skills at the Muleskinner and we want to know if you want to come work for our TV station." And at first I was like, "Matt, hold up." Matt was our advisor and I said, "Matt, wait a second. Should I do this?" And we looked through it and we looked at like how much I would be paid and what the station was like and stuff. And I came to the conclusion with some of the people that I worked with here and with my family, of course, and off I went to Iowa right after I graduated. I think 2 weeks after I graduated, I packed up my things and I moved. And ever since then, which has only been 4 months, but ever since then I have been working in broadcast news at a TV station where I produce, report, and anchor the news, which is a huge learning experience, and it's been really wonderful.
So I thought a long time about going into journalism, and I was a public relations major while I was here, so I always thought I would do something with communication or marketing or something like that, but I actually ended up working in higher education, and I'm earning my master's degree right now in college student personnel, so I'll be working with college students and I am now, and after graduation I will. I actually run a residence hall of about 400 students, and I help them kind of get acclimated to college and just with anything that they need. I do conduct cases, so I hear when people break the rules, they come to me, and it's been really interesting. I think that a lot of the skills I learned from the Muleskinner with interviewing and just interpersonal skills have really helped me with being a residence hall director. So that's been really great.
So right after college, I worked at the Sedalia Democrat as a news reporter actually, I covered city government, but I also wrote features and, it was a small paper, so we did a little bit of everything. And so I worked there for about 7 years, and then I worked in healthcare marketing for about 3 years, and currently I teach full-time at State Fair Community College communication classes and really enjoy that too.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I held a student protest, and I got kicked out of college, so I went to Mexico, Missouri.
Nice.
And I worked as a news writer at the Mexico Ledger. It was a daily newspaper, and the grind. This is the daily grind of writing, 4 to 6 stories every day is different than a weekly that you have here at the Muleskinner. And then a year after I got there, I started looking for other positions. I was tired of it. I wasn't making any money at all. And I got the news editor at Cameron, Missouri, of their paper. And so I worked in Cameron, Missouri for 5.5 years, almost 6. 5.5 years I worked at Cameron as the news editor up there. And then I got kind of homesick. I decided to move back home. And plus I wasn't going anyplace, just no upward mobility. Wasn't any place for me to go. And online was taken over. And so I went back home and I started working construction work, and now I work at Lowe's.
Nice.
Selling appliances. But as far as what I learned and how it's helped me, for one thing, I look at things in a different way. I think if you do journalism, you look at things a totally different way than you do if you're say just an accounting major or a teacher or something, you look at stuff as there's always two sides to a story, or anyway, we should. There's always two sides, and maybe there's 3 or 4 sides to a story, but there's at least always 2. And I think that has helped me, those reasoning skills and stuff. In fact, people at work say that they hate arguing with me because I don't ever lose. So, anyway. And I attribute that to my time at the Muleskinner.
Well, we learned a lot with laying things out and just knowing how to interview people and to, and I learned a lot from working with the people that worked with me. As a managing editor, I got a lot of opportunity to not only edit their stuff, but also to kind of get used to helping people learn as they were going through, from their freshman year all the way through their senior year, and a little more about what they were doing and all that sort of thing. So when I then went out, I got a position as communications director for a nonprofit, and I was there for 18 years, and I went from being the communications director and worked my way up from there to the associate executive director. But I learned so much about, layout, editing, all that sort of thing. So I just sort of jumped in and learned that the more you do, the more value you are as you go along.
Do you have a piece of advice or multiple pieces of advice, though, for students who want to get into journalism, or if they walk by and they're like, oh, the Muleskinner, a paper, what do you have to say to them?
Well, I'd have to be honest with them and tell them the job market is not very good. But they can learn so much working on a paper that'll transfer over to doing various kinds of work when they get out. I've been surprised over the years how many journalism grads went on to law school, for instance. And I've had law professors tell me they like to have journalism students because they ask tough questions, they take very careful notes, and they know how to write.
Well, I think one of the biggest things that I learned, and one of the biggest things that I want a lot of students and people in general who are looking into different career fields, is make sure that you're willing to go the distance to do what you want to do. Don't stop, keep pushing, keep doing the work, have those sleepless nights, have those nights where you want to pull your hair out, and just keep working for the things that you want, and it will come together. It will all fall into place. You will be so happy. Even if you, like right now, obviously I'm not going to stop in Southeast Iowa at a small station where I do everything. I'm going to keep working. I'm going to keep going for those goals. And I just hope that the work that I do will keep furthering me. And I think that just, as long as you take it one step at a time, you keep working, you're going to reach those goals. Life is a ladder. You have to slowly climb those rungs a lot of times. And don't give up. Just keep working hard, and you'll reach your goals. So,
I would say make the most of the experience by being involved and doing anything and everything that you have the opportunity to, and get to know the faculty or professors, because they will ultimately, if you allow them to and you foster those relationships, will become really great mentors to you for the rest of your life. And I was really fortunate that Dr. Fair was one of those people that was really influential in my life in so many ways, and I think that that's a lot of experience. Sometimes it's overlooked. We think about our professors as being kind of, I don't know, these really busy, important people, and we're not worthy. And really, they are here because they want to help you, and they want to do anything that they can to foster you as a budding journalist or as a professional. And so making the most of that experience is something that I would recommend.